Hello. Hello.
Hello.
That's why I said we're not going to talk. Mr. Ken, thank you for allowing me to be able to come and just spend a little time, and always an honor to be able to just talk football and really talk life, and just listening to the coaches and everyone be able to speak before me. You know, I'm always intrigued and just, you know, we're tremendously blessed, not only with the honor and opportunity to play as far as athletics is concerned, but just with some of the teachers and some of the young men and women that take the time to be able to help our young athletes. And I know Coach talked about it. The job is not just to help them on the athletic field, but in the classroom as well. And I think for them to have that opportunity to be able to be better young men and better women, young women, and to ultimately contribute to our society, I think that's what it's all about. And you know, just I want to commend obviously our coaches and everyone, our principals, as well as our administrators for the job that you do. And trust me, I know it's not an easy one. I mean, because a lot of times, not only, and the coaches obviously know this, you're not only playing mom, dad, uncle, grandparent, but you know, a lot of times there's other roles that you have to kind of take over. And obviously I know different situations for different kids, and you know, that's just the job that you're tasked with, and it's not an easy one. And I just want to commend you for that opportunity. Talk about not only just the Saints, but just sports in general. It's an outstanding time, and we better enjoy it. I mean, because we're definitely spoiled, not only with our high school football, but you talk about the college teams playing so well and just having the opportunity. We do host the championship here, national championship here in New Orleans, and you know, just the possibility that we may have a team in it, I think that's special in itself. But when you talk about locally looking at Tulane already qualifying for a bowl game, and you know, I think having their sights set on moving up as far as the pecking order is concerned in the bowl opportunity, I think that's an outstanding chance. Coach, crossing routes. I was at the game this past week. Crossing routes, he killed your linebackers. You got to get on him, Coach. That was, you know, it's communication, whatever, but crossing routes, you got to tell that safety to get down and buzz. He's got to rob a little quicker, or you know. But yeah, that's what I saw. I mean, penalties. I think you had 12 penalties over 100 yards. It's just small things, and some of it, you know, it may be lack of focus. And look, any coach will tell you, I'll take a guy playing hard. I'll take a young man playing hard. That's not the penalty. It's the pre-start. It's the pre-snap penalties. It's the ones that they know they can't do. That's what drives a coach. That's what drives them, and that's what drives them. I mean, but if a young man is out there hustling, and even the young ladies out there playing their hardest, that's what you want. That's all you can ask. And if they make a mistake, you correct them and you go forward. And so just seeing it, just being able to go and see it, and for me having the opportunity to be able to do the broadcast, and a couple of people we've talked about it. That's not something that I really thought I would be involved with and doing, but since I have that opportunity, just to be able to share some of the things that I learned as far as from the great coaches, whether you're talking about going back to Coach David Cutcliffe, or obviously Coach Sean Payton, or Coach not Mike McCarthy. I'm thinking about Mike McIntyre, but that's the defense coordinator up at Ole. But Coach Mike McCarthy, Coach Mike, and just some of the things that they were able to share with me, and I was able to learn as far as being in their systems for myself, to have the ability to teach. To have the ability to teach and share the knowledge of the game. That's what I enjoy doing. And you know, when you talk about looking at this Saints team, and obviously not playing last week, but going into the bye, and with them having an opportunity to be able to get healthy at this point, you're right at 7-1, and you have the back end of your schedule, basically division games. There's 2 games that are non-conference games. You play the 49ers and you play Indianapolis, but outside of that, it's division games. And so for them, this next stretch is going to be really interesting. And I think the opportunity to be able to repeat that 7-1, the way I see it, 6-2 at worst, possibly 8-0, is not something out of the realm of possibility for this team. But obviously, when you talk about, from an offensive standpoint, what they were able to do with Bridgewater taking over as a quarterback, losing Drew Brees, Drew mending that thumb, it's only going to get better for himself. And Teddy playing well enough from an offensive standpoint and growing in that offense. I think that was probably critical. You didn't know when you signed him if he would have to play, but if he did, we kind of saw the results. And look, everyone will tell you, other players had to step up. And whether you're talking from a defensive standpoint or a special team standpoint, all of those individuals did. And I think, when you look at this team from top to bottom as far as having the 53 players that they do have, they are probably one of the deepest units in the NFL. And I think that bodes really, really well for them, just because they can have a guy that gets nicked up or he's not available, where they get in trouble if it's a key position and he's out for an extended time. They can't lose that. But if it's a player or two or even a week or two, they have enough depth across the board that they can sustain. And I think this has probably been one of Sean Payton's best coaching jobs this year, just because of some of the adversity that they've been hit with as far as injuries and losing players or having to shuffle offensively, having to create points and not get in the way sometimes of thinking that I have to go out and score so many points. That Saints team, they have a top 5 defense. And you take away the Houston game, they're probably the number 1 defense. Houston was able to put up some points and put up some yardage on them. But outside of that, they have really stymied every other team from a defensive standpoint. You look at some of the mobile quarterbacks that they've been able to play and how they wanted to play those quarterbacks all changed. And I saw it today, Carolina is putting Cam Newton on injury reserve. So really, they won't play a true mobile quarterback the rest of the year. And I think for them, you look at the numbers as far as sacks, quarterback hits, quarterback hurries, that should all increase. And I think it's just the top style of teams that you will be playing. From a defensive line standpoint, they probably have the deepest unit that they've had here in a long, long time. And so that definitely helps when you talk about teams having the ability to double team Cam Jordan, if they're going to do that, or if not double teaming, they're going to have to put a tight end or a running back over to slow him down. And those other guys are going to have one-on-one opportunities, and so far they've been able to win those one-on-one opportunities. So from a defensive line standpoint, they're getting better. I know a lot of people were upset with Davenport and his production. I think he's only gotten better this year. Had a couple games where he did have multiple sacks. He created his first strip fumble this year. And he has to continue to get better. He knows that from not only stopping the run, but just from reading and awareness and being able to have multiple moves as far as the defensive end, that's what he has to continue to expand on as far as his game is concerned. And I think he will. And so from a defensive line standpoint, hopefully you continue to get Sheldon Rankins more snaps as he recovers from his Achilles injury last year. And I think, the sweet spot as far as playing time for him is probably going to be about 50 to 60 snaps as far as percentage of plays is concerned. So, whether that's 30 snaps, 40 snaps, you'll just have to see how that game unfolds. But, I think he's obviously an explosive player. You look at that linebacker unit, Kiko Alonso was a young man that they traded for really before the season, and he ends up coming in and having to play a lot because you do lose Anzalone to a shoulder injury, and Kiko's played really, really well. Last week or 2 weeks ago was the first time that they really used him outside of base defense, and I thought it was interesting because, he just gives you a different dynamic. He's not known as a cover guy per se. He's more of a run stopper on first down, but he's been able to help you in your dime package some, and it would be interesting to see how they continue to shuffle those linebackers with DeMario and A.J. Klein. And I think those guys have done a really, really good job on the back end as far as the secondary is concerned. the one place I feel like that this defense, even though they're a top 5 unit, could improve is turnovers. And they've created some fumbles, but they're getting their hands on some balls as far as interceptions, and they're not coming up with them. That's the one place that they probably could improve on, and that's something that they practice. That's something that DA Dennis Allen preaches to them, and if they can get their hands on more balls as far as interceptions, I think that's where you really talk about elite defense, because right now, you're top 5 as far as stopping the run. If teams can't run, you talk about the trenches. If teams can't run, then it's a passing situation. And in this league, if you can rush the quarterback and disrupt him, you're going to be fairly successful. Offensively, we talk about the offensive line really early in the year. That group was up and down. If you go back and you think about it, they had the holding penalties. They weren't scoring in the red zone. They had the false starts, and whether it was because of Teddy or Drew or whomever was in there, there's really no excuse. But they've played really, really better. They've played a lot better probably after week 3, really. And that's probably the strength of that offense, is how well they play offensively. You probably have the 2 top tackles, Ryan Ramczyk and Armstead, in the NFL. Their ability to be able to stop elite pass rushers allows Sean to be able to use the receivers and tight ends, not just for blocking, but to be able to create mismatches. And I think, obviously the way that he uses his personnel, his formation, he can sprinkle Taysom Hill in because now Drew is back. I think that's where he creates some mismatches. And so from a standpoint of scheme-wise, we'll continue to see him use that offensive line kind of work, in my opinion, now that you'll have Alvin back this second stretch. I think it's really working him into what they're doing from an offensive standpoint. I think that you found something offensively up front, using Murray as far as a primary runner. Now sprinkle Alvin in and let him create those mismatches. We'll kind of wait and see if that's actually what it does, but I think that's the easiest thing to be able to do. When you look at the receivers, it's amazing what Michael Thomas is doing, and sometimes I just shake my head and wonder defensively, double him. I mean, not only roll a safety, but double him. Make the Saints have to use someone else, and whether it's stubborn or just cocky or I don't know, but I have a lot of respect for Patrick Peterson, but I thought that you really saw him might be able to go to my favorite route, slant, or to be able to use a corner or go route, and they used him in a really good way. But if I'm playing the Saints, I'm doubling. Somebody else is going to have to beat me. They're going to have to show me that you have somebody else that can beat you. You haven't seen it consistently. And I think that's the one thing that you have to worry about. The number 2 receiver truly is probably Jared Cook. But he's been hurt. And then he was inconsistent when he was not hurt. And so at some point you should get him back the second half of the season. It may be this week against Atlanta. But I think that they've done a good job using Ted Ginn to be able to stretch the field, and then obviously running some speed outs and some other things that he can do. But it all starts with Michael Thomas, and teams they've struggled stopping him. So that's really how it looks. I know Will, from a special teams standpoint, Will Lutz probably in a little funk, so it doesn't hurt to give him kind of a break as well. It's very rare to see him miss 3 kicks like he has this season, really lately, 2 in Chicago and 1 against the Cardinals. But I think from a confidence standpoint, Sean believes in him from really 55 in, and particularly when you're playing in a dome, that may get stretched to 57 depending on the situation. But outside of that, he's been really solid. Morstead, you can't say enough about him and his ability to be able to pin teams inside not just the 20, but inside the 10. And from a coverage standpoint, I've given up a couple kicks, kickoff and kick punt return, but it's not something that you're overly worried about, particularly if you've got some guys, Gray, Hardy, some of those guys, JT Gray, some of those guys that are healthy from that standpoint, they'll definitely help you. And Deontay Harris is a phenomenal returner. The biggest thing that he's got to do is squeeze the football on those punt returns and kickoff returns. But I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if he does return another punt as well as a kickoff this upcoming year. Wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. I'll take any questions, thoughts.
As an official, these guys here, one of the first things they told us, you'll never watch a football game the same again. Sort of looking for infractions. Mm-hmm. And when you came in with the color, you've got a good knack of doing that. As soon as the flag's thrown, you see the penalty before they announce it. You're pretty good at that. It adds a lot to the color. My question is on the drafts and the free agency acquisitions only. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest surprise, and the biggest disappointment?
The biggest surprise from a free agent is probably surprise. Free agency is probably Deontay Harris, because literally everybody had, and even myself, it was Marcus Sherrills as the punt return. There was no question, no thought. Deontay, if he made it, it was going to be special teams. But you have to be available in this league. You only get to carry 53 players, and Marcus wasn't healthy. He did end up signing with Minnesota and later on released. But I think that was probably the biggest surprise. The other probably disappointment, I would probably say Nick Easton. And really that's because you didn't know that you would draft Eric McCoy. You didn't know McCoy would be available as far as draft is concerned. And the only reason I say disappointment because he's been a healthy scratch in some games for you. And so one of the young men that Will Clapp, he's been phenomenal. Will has been able to step in. He can play center for you. He can play guard for you. He's the extra or jumbo tackle for you. So he gives you 3 players where you can only normally dress 46. Taysom Hill gives you 3 players, possibly 4 players. So where the Saints can play with 46, they're actually probably playing with, right at 50 players, just because the versatility of those 2 guys and what they can do. The other disappointment is probably Cooks. Jared, just because the expectation was 700, 800 yards, and at worst, 7 to possibly 10 touchdowns. Now look, he's got, 2 touchdowns, and there's still time left in the season, but from what you saw this spring and what you saw during camp, you hadn't seen it. And I think that's probably the biggest disappointment, and that's probably being picky, but that's the truth. And from an official standpoint, certain officials are throwing flags for certain things. So when you see a play, whether it's to the right, to the left, and one of the back judges, it's a holding call. I mean, that's what he is looking for. One of those back judges, he's looking for holding. And the other one, a lot of times it's follow the ball. Well, yes, I follow the ball, but for me, I look at the overall, just the overall guys, and it's very, very, very few, backside of a play. If it's something backside, it's going to be a holding or some type of chop block, etc. But just been blessed to be able to play that game and to see it really well, and and just understanding and knowing what some officials call and what they're looking for. And then if that's where it's coming from, this is what he saw, and this is the individual that he is going to call it on, whether it's a hold, whether it's helmet to helmet, the false start, and that's just knowing what that official is responsible for calling, and did you see it? And I've just been blessed enough to see it and know that's what the official is responsible for calling.
Hey, I've noticed that Murray has really come to his own this year with the absence of Kamara. Mm-hmm. But now that we're probably getting Kamara back, I'm kind of seeing a dynamic that's similar to when you and Reggie Bush were together. And don't you see that Peyton might go back to the way he used you and Reggie at the same time?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. And really the one thing that you're going to do from an offensive standpoint is, what does this team do best? And that's really, what does my offensive line do best? Are they blocking outside zone? Are they blocking inside zone? Are we a power team? So what does my offensive line do best? And now I can call plays based off of that. Personnel-wise, he can use any personnel that he wants to use. I mean, I think, when you talk about Murray, if it's me having Murray, Latavius in there as well as with Alvin, I am going to run outside plays. I think when you have Latavius in there with Zach Lyon, the fullback, then, I'm hitting teams in between the A and the B gap or behind the guards and the centers. And our guards and centers are best, I think, in my opinion, straightforward. They're maulers. The big guys, they want to maul. They want to lay on people. Now, we have the ability to be able to run some toss sweeps and some power stuff, which plays well with your guards and centers as well. But, that is probably going to fit Latavius Murray better as far as when you talk about what he does really well. Now, he can get out, you can run some sweeps and some different things to keep defenses honest so they just can't load the box on you or know first down, they're running right here. Sometimes you don't care. As an offense, they still have to stop you. But you can't run 60, 70 plays in that manner as well. But I wouldn't be surprised at some point that you do see the two tailback looks as well as maybe even three backs in the game and Alvin lining up as a receiver, and it's always a matchup issue. It's always going to be a matchup issue. You'll always see Sean in his first 15. He'll hit you with two tight ends. He'll hit you with three tight ends. If you have Jared Cook and you use Taysom Hill as an H and you have Josh Hill and now you have Cooks, that's a three tight end look. But how is it adjusting? Is the defense going to play just strictly 4-3? Are they going to adjust to nickel? And then if I have Latavius in the game as well, and I have I'm losing my train of thought. And Kamara in the game. So now you've got two wild card players, but you're in a three tight end set. So if a team is going to play nickel against that, I'm running the ball. And so that's all what Sean does. I mean, that's what he is creating. That's what he is seeing. And so the job of not having some of those weapons, particularly AK and Jared Cook, and still being able to game plan and win games, I thought that was impressive. Nothing else?